Hello friends, welcome back to Cramps and Chaos. Before we move on with today's chapter, I have a disclaimer for you. This podcast is for information purposes only, and it's not intended to replace professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Cramps and Chaos is a platform where people affected by endometriosis can share their stories. These views and experiences are personal and may not reflect those of all individuals living with endometriosis. There aren't any right or wrong answers. Everyone's journey is different. Hello, puppies, and welcome back to Crumbs and Chaos. In today's episode, I'm joined by my friend Ray, and here's the twist. He's a guy who knows pretty much nothing about periods or endometriosis, so this time, I'll be the one answering the questions. We'll go over the basics, break things down simply, and hopefully cover the kinds of questions that some people might not feel comfortable asking. And if you'd like to be part of the Crumbs and Chaos community, we've got a Discord. It's a space where you can share your experiences, connect with others, and keep the conversation going. You'll find the link in the comments. Okay, let's dive in. Enjoy!
All right. Cool. All right. So it's good that we already talked about it last time, but I think I don't have any idea what it is, right?
Yeah.
So it's good. It's a good starting point. So I know that can I say it's a disease, or is it like
It's a chronic disease.
It's a chronic disease, and the chronic disease, from what I understood, is like linked with the period, right? And I think I'm the perfect person to talk to as a gay man who doesn't know anything about periods. I think periods already like something,
No.
Well, I was like, what is that?
Yeah, I think it's I remember that we talked a bit about it, and like I know that you don't know a lot, but you would be surprised how many people don't know anything about, unless they have a sister, had a girlfriend, or have a girlfriend that has it, or a friend.
Yeah.
Barely anyone knows. And I think the thing with endometriosis is that it's one of the most painful diseases that you can have. It can vary obviously in degrees of pain. My understanding of what endometriosis is that actually,
how do you pronounce it? Metriosis? Endometriosis.
Yeah.
Is it Latin?
Which it's so basically I think so. It's actually misleading because the endometrium is the lining of the inside of the uterus.
Oh, okay.
Which is the part that sheds blood when you're on your period. Like, I'm not a doctor, so like I'm just explaining what I know.
Yeah.
But when every month you bleed, and you bleed.
Endometrio is just like a description of one part of the organ.
Yeah, it's a layer of the uterus.
Okay.
And then you have the myometrium, which is another layer. And the endometriosis, the name comes from the word endometrium. The disease itself grows outside your pelvis, in your intestines, in your bladder, on your intestines, in your vagina. It can go like beyond, like you can have thoracic endometriosis, which is in your diaphragm, lungs.
So what is the correct, like the normal periods version without it would not grow outside?
No, it doesn't.
So it only grows in a certain area when a woman is having like the correct period.
The correct period is actually the endometrium thickens throughout the month. Like when you have your period, you only bleed from your endometrium. With the endometriosis, the thing is that these cells grow outside of the uterus.
Okay.
And there's no explanation. There's no like 100% sure explanation of how these cells are growing outside the uterus. The misleading part of, I believe, the word endometriosis is that these endometrium-like cells,
Yeah.
these cells that are similar to the ones of the lining of the uterus and grow outside of it,
Yeah.
they don't react to hormones the same way.
Okay.
They don't act the same way.
But the cyclus or the cycle of the time is also like when you're having the period, they're supposed to leave the body also, or not?
The
Okay.
thing is, again, like, because these um, lesions from these like tissue that grows and
Yeah.
then sometimes bleeds can create cysts,
Mm-hmm.
which are called endometriomas. It's really painful.
Mm-hmm.
That's this pain that it's often described
Yeah.
that comes with endometriosis is um, everything that grows outside of your uterus.
Yeah.
And often you can have it can grow around your bladder, so you can have bladder issues. It can grow around your intestine, and you can have really bad intestine
But is
issues.
it focused on a certain area of the body, or is it does it go up to
It can go, I mean, they found it on the brain,
uh-huh
they found it in your lungs, they found it in your
in
leg.
in very like severe cases,
Yeah,
you would say, right?
the thing is, it's underestimated how dangerous it is for
Okay.
how much of your organs can eat. And you can not know that you have it, you're not treating it, and you don't know that this is growing
Mm-hmm.
inside of you. And the thing with endometriosis is that the level of pain that you have isn't the level of severity of the disease. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's 20% of women don't realize that they women that are end up getting diagnosed with endometriosis only find out when when they find out that they are infertile.
Okay. Okay. So it is, I mean, you already said it's a very painful
Mm-mm.
condition. And also you said like it could cause like people getting infertile.
Mm-mm.
So how, like, is it so people don't know because it's very rare, or people don't know because just people don't know? Is it like a something really rare which doesn't
Hmm.
happen, it only happens like one of hundreds,
You know
or
how many women have it? One every 9 women. It's
okay,
not rare, it's just not talked about.
yeah, why do you think so?
I think in general, misogyny,
Hmm.
the fact that we live in a patriarchal society, and everything that is, in my opinion, everything that is related to the reproductive system, the female reproductive system, it's talked a lot about, for example, no to abortions.
Yeah.
There's things that are talked about a lot,
Yeah.
and there's things that aren't talked about, like the diseases that affect the female reproductive system, because there's a lack of general interest
Yeah.
in female in women and people that are aside female at birth, in the pain that they suffer.
I can imagine, right? Because like I think also people talking about period, that's also not like a thing which people talk about,
Yeah,
you know, in
yeah,
former time. I cannot speak so much about it because I don't have periods. So, but there were times where people when women have like period and they don't show,
yeah, yeah,
or like it's kind of a little bit stigmatized, and
yeah,
also there's some historical Christian background behind it
yeah.
also, right?
Oh my
About the
god, yeah.
bleeding and all this kind of stuff. So and then they you need to write me down how do I write it?
How do
The
you write
disease
it?
uh,
Endometriosis.
endometriosis. Oh, this is very difficult to
How do you
pronounce.
pronounce, how would it be in German?
Endometros
In German.
endometriose.
Oh yeah. But yeah, so imagine how little periods are talked about.
Yeah.
And because there's a lot of lack of knowledge on the fact that endometriosis is not a period problem,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not classified as an autoimmune disease,
Mm-hmm.
but it has really a lot in common with, it's also often associated with autoimmune diseases. One of the symptoms, and I went through this when I in my process of being diagnosed, because you go online and you find some symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
and I, for like, whenever I read online, I saw myself in what the endometriosis was described as. I didn't have all the symptoms.
Yeah.
And whenever I told my doctor, the one that I went for years, my family gynecologist,
Yeah.
used to say, you don't have all the symptoms, it can't be endometriosis because you don't have all the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
But I realize now how much of it, like, I think that's another like big misconception, that you have to have all of the symptoms
Mm-hmm.
in order for you to have endometriosis. Is like, the negative thing is the lack of trying to find out what is. Like, I've been dismissed so many times for, vomiting. Like, when on my period, I would have like bad intestine problems,
Okay.
and um and bad, nausea. Like, I don't eat for 2 days straight. Like, I
Yeah.
eat like small things like carrots, crisps, but
Mm-hmm.
when my period is over, it's like I'm famished. Like, it's like I've been on like a liquid diet for days, and
Yeah.
I'm so hungry because for days I didn't get
Sure.
the nutrients that I needed, because I cannot eat anything. And I remember like telling my doctor, and yeah, like, there was always these kind of,
So the symptoms is very multi-directional already with you as one person,
yeah, I
right?
think so.
And then also like from what I understood is a little bit like every person have like also very different symptoms. So
Yeah,
there's a range of different
yeah,
symptoms that you could get. So that is tend to be misdiagnosed
yeah,
in many ways.
yeah,
So
exactly.
that's like one of the reason, like that's like one point, right? Like
Yeah,
when doctor misdiagnose things. And the second would be that there's a thing in the society that people maybe don't want to talk about it, and
yeah,
therefore there's just not so much research on it,
yeah. There's
right?
definitely a
Because
lack of
it's
funding.
linked to the female period,
Yeah,
and that's also kind of a thing that
y-
leads to that people don't.
yeah.
Yeah,
And also, I think the one thing that I learned throughout the years, and I really try and advocate for that, is that your period, if it stops you from living a normal life, that's not normal. And I I wish that I knew that, because I lived, I don't know, I got my period when I was 15, and at 25 I started getting worse, but I could never do anything on my period. Like,
yeah,
I had to get my mom to pick me up from school. I couldn't go out with my friends. I thought that was normal. I thought everyone else wasn't doing anything when they were on their periods.
yeah.
And I don't know, maybe I didn't have endometriosis back then. I think so. I think I had it.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, what got worse is when around when I turned 25, I started feeling ill throughout the month. So having pain before my period, having pain during my period, and then
Yeah.
having pain after, and then ovulating and having pain. And then that was it. And I would have
Mm-hmm.
only a few days. And that's when, I was very much used to being in pain, but that's when I thought, this cannot be like,
Yeah.
it's okay that for a week, I thought it was okay for a week, a month, to be, um, nauseous,
Mm-hmm.
uh, with, couldn't go to the bathroom. I couldn't really like walk around. I had
Mm-hmm.
to stay in bed for
Mm-hmm.
like at least 2 days. And that was already not normal. But
Yeah.
um, I think female pain is very much like normalized as a must, and I think that's why so many times, and I don't think it's something done in bad faith. I don't think
Mhm.
doctors are out to get a patient that is trying to communicate their symptoms. I don't think anyone does it intentionally to like
Yeah.
create these situations of pain, of gaslight, of
Yeah.
but they exist. Like that's a reality of it. And I
Yeah.
think,
It's more
the
like that people confuse the period with the
the
disease,
disease, exactly.
right?
Yeah. And
Okay.
also there's a general mistrust on female pain.
Yeah.
You have that you have that so often. There's a lot of
Yeah.
suspicion
Yeah.
around a woman's pain. Is she in that
Hmm.
much pain? Can she be trusted in what she's
Yeah.
saying?
I think especially when there is no awareness that there is a disease on top of the
Yeah,
period, right? Because
yeah,
I think the periods, well, like when people don't know that there is a disease which is linked to period, people would just think, this person has like a strong period,
yeah.
right? I remember, like, I mean that happened like 3 years ago. Like when I was working at university, and one of the students was having a period, and she fainted, and she has to go to the doctor.
Hmm.
And like we asked, like what is the condition? Like why did she faint? Is it too
Yeah.
much sun? Maybe I think people think about all this kind of sort of thing
Hmm.
that could cause faint, and people would understand. But
Yeah.
then, like one of her friends was saying that she was having her periods,
Hmm.
and we were all, because we didn't know about the condition,
Yeah.
we were all like, "Oh, I mean, we didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't say anything bad, right? But
Yeah.
we're just like, oh, yeah, that's like a having like me. Then I think subconsciously, because you are biased in a certain way, you're just like, yeah, but like maybe it's just a period.
Hmm.
Why is it
Yeah.
like to say extreme? Why make such a fuss about
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
right?
yeah. It's good
Because
to
like,
hear that from someone that thought that, because
yeah, yeah, yeah,
when there's no knowledge, the bias is there. Like
yeah,
it's not down to the person, it's just common
yeah,
misknowledge. And you think, well, like just
yeah.
for a period, you're like, this is happening.
Yeah, but I also think like I mean for sure we didn't know, and it seems also that the girl and her friends
Mm,
didn't know it at
mm,
that time, because like then she would not just say like she's having her period, right?
mm.
Then she would say the term properly. So,
Yeah. Oh my,
and
maybe she didn't even
explain
know.
also like
Yeah.
what is, I think like it seems like I'm not very sure that she had it, but like it's if she would have it, then it's also kind of the case that she didn't know herself, even like she's
Yeah.
suffering from it, and that people just don't know about
Yeah,
it, right?
exactly. And
Okay.
I think it causes very uncomfortable situations when you don't know that you have it, because you obviously compare yourself to others so
Yeah.
much, and you see everyone around you not being as sick as you are.
Yeah.
And I mean, you get to a point where you think, if we all have periods, why am I on the floor and
Yeah.
people go to school when I
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
go to school? Like,
Yeah.
is it something else that I have?
Yeah.
Is it because of my periods? Like, what is wrong?
Yeah.
And I think the fact that the first thing that always comes to mind is that that person is lazy, sensitive,
Sensitive, I
uh
would say, is
exactly,
the
even like said by doctors themselves. Like I
Mhm.
heard that many times. I was called an hypochondriac, sensitive,
Yeah.
and um and I really think that's not fair, because
Mhm.
on top of feeling sick
Mhm.
and feeling bad about it, because uh, you know when you don't know why you're bailing so much, why all of a sudden you're sick and you can't go out,
Yeah.
it's really hard. Like, it's harder to, you end up justifying yourself. You end up
Mhm.
being like, oh, I'm so sorry,
Yeah.
I
You need
wasn't
to
sick five
apologize
minutes
for
ago.
like
Yeah.
being sick.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you're the one that is left at home.
Yeah.
And we all had situations where you've had friends that stop calling. There's also this thing that pain is not really something that is talked about so much,
Yeah.
because it's a bit of a party pooper when
Yeah.
when you're in pain or there's something wrong with you and you're asked how are you,
Mhm.
uh, that is how you are.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
you're not worried about exams, you're worried that you're sick.
Yeah.
And that can be something that, and it's not people's fault, but I think as
Yeah.
a society we all are very scared of pain, and talking about pain, and also talking about disease. We don't
Mhm.
talk about disease.
Yeah.
and and when you're young and you don't know what you have, and you
Yeah.
go to the doctor, and that one person that you're supposed to trust
Yeah.
doesn't give you any answers, and
Yeah.
instead says that you're sensitive, potentially, which I don't know if this happened to your student,
Yeah.
but let's say that it has. It's really hard to come out of that loophole.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, maybe this podcast is not going to change anything, probably not going to change anything. But the intent, at least we're talking about it, and
Yeah.
at least people have a platform to tell their story and share it, and maybe someone is listening
Yeah.
and thinking, wow, I could have endometriosis. This person went
Yeah.
to the doctor and advocated for
Yeah.
themselves. Maybe I
Mhm.
can do that too. Maybe
Mhm.
next
True.
time I won't come home feeling that what a fool am I for, like, I used to do that. I used to
Mhm.
try very timidly to explain myself. And as soon as my doctor or my doctors would say, oh, no, I think you're fine, I have patients that are way worse than you, I was having, on one hand, I was really relieved because no one wants to hear that there's could be something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And on the other hand,
It's a little bit gaslighting, right?
it's gaslighting
Yeah.
because you don't go on.
Yeah,
Like,
because like you just it's more like, yeah, you're fine. Maybe you in that moment you feel good, but then I think on the other hand you would start to think that you kind of are more sensitive
yeah,
than other people,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
And then you are kind of pretending that everything is okay,
Yep, exactly.
which you can't hide
Yeah.
from other people when you're in pain longer than or more intensively
Mm-mm.
than other women.
Mm.
So what are the like, just kind of personal experiences that you had with other people when you have like when you are in the period of pain? Yeah, because like for example, obviously like at work in certain work
Oh,
situation
yeah.
or in school, in university or whatever, like
Yeah.
it just reaches every level of the daily life, right?
Yeah, I
And
think
when
so.
you just imagine when you understand it or when uh, but the other people don't get it,
Yeah.
or the worst like let's just imagine in the situation of my student
Mm.
that she herself also didn't
Yeah.
get it. She
Yeah.
doesn't have know about what's going on with her body. She
Yeah.
doesn't know that she's actually sick.
Yeah.
So do other people react to that at work, for example?
Oh, I don't know. I think I've been freelance for 6 years,
Yeah.
and before I used to be full time,
Yeah.
and I had very mixed situations because
Mhm.
I feel that, unfortunately, like, I worked in Italy but only as a waitress, and that
Mhm.
was the worst. That
Okay.
was, I don't want to sound like that person, but I think whenever I had a man manager, a man boss, I
Yeah.
never felt. I actually would say that I had a flu, because just saying that I had my
Mm.
period would be, I knew that they would not understand.
Okay.
And
Got it.
I know what a lot of people think of. They think, oh, you must be really sensitive if you have to stay at home for your
Yeah.
period. So when I was a lot younger,
Hmm.
unless I would be in school and I would be caught like off guard, which happens sometimes, and I had to get my mom to pick me up
Yeah.
because maybe painkillers wouldn't work, or I always had struggles with painkillers taking a long time to work. So
But
sometimes,
you mean that when you were working as the waitress, that was the time when you still were not officially diagnosed with
yeah,
endometriosis, right? So you also didn't have the opportunity to,
yeah, exactly.
because like technically when you say that you're having a period, it's not right,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Because it's not just the
about yeah,
periods.
exactly,
I mean,
exactly.
period can already suck
Yeah,
from what I've heard from my friends, right? But then, like, it's actually it isn't. It's something different,
it's something
right?
different. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly, because you have a lot of these symptoms that you didn't connect. It took me a long time to connect all my symptoms together.
Yeah.
And for example, I always had like atrocious pain during ovulation,
Uh huh.
and I never really talked about that to my doctor
Mm.
because I didn't know when I was ovulating. And
Yeah.
now, after years, when I track my period now, when I was 18, I didn't.
Yeah.
And now, like years ago, after getting diagnosed, I'm like, oh my God, that's ovulation. And I
Mm.
would like, I actually had an episode like not long ago. I went to a friend's wedding and it caught me like that, just like that. I was white as a sheet and I had to lay down because I had cramps that were like, came
Okay.
out of the blue and I just needed to lay down.
Yeah.
And I would have that. I had that for my entire life.
Yeah.
And when I was working as a waitress, you it's not even period related. It is, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not like when you're that young, when you're bleeding, you have your period, and the rest of the cycle. What is that? Like, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what luteal phase, ovulation, and which one is the other one? There's a third one after your period. Follicular phase. Um, and I mean, it's hard because I remember feeling I was gonna get fired,
Yeah.
feeling that people thought that I was just being cheeky and having a break,
Yeah.
uh, getting angry because I was there lying down on a sofa in the break room and people
Yeah.
were covering for me,
Mm-hmm.
and that's very vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's a very vulnerable place to be because you're you don't even know why.
You kind of
You
feel like the person in the team who kind of doesn't want to do the job, or like make a fuss about it, and like trying to be theatrical.
Yeah, exactly. You do end up being that person that is always sick. And I
Uh
hated that.
yeah.
Like I would have that with friends where we would plan to go to a discotheque
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden I would not feel like going out, or I would be in pain, or sometimes it could be period related or non, because I
Yeah.
always had like a lot of pain around my period.
Mhm.
Um, and you end up canceling, and it's always that like, oh, why did I not, like, I kind of expected it from you, and you hear that
Uh-huh.
phrase a lot. And I think I think that these general misunderstanding of the fact that all these symptoms add up to like connect. I think when you realize that all these symptoms are connected to and form part of what is a disease, um, it's then a long way to deconstruct what we, because of how society is built, because of how we are told as women, or on how much how productive we have to be,
Yeah.
or how much in pain we can be.
Yeah.
I think once you deconstruct all these, it's all like then building again. So all these sense of guilt for like being sick when working, being sick
Mm.
when you have to cancel plans, when you have to go home from school, uh, that never really leaves you unless you do an actual, not the contrary of passive, active, like work on yourself. Because now I'm 32 and I still feel so guilty
Yeah.
for when I'm in pain, and I have to actively tell myself not to be. And
Mm-hmm.
all it takes is for me to be a bit weak that day, mentally, and I could end up feeling really bad about the fact that I'm feeling sick,
On top.
on top of not feeling great. Exactly.
Like also after
Yeah.
it ended, then
Yeah.
you feel like it on top.
Because also there's
Like
a component of like the fact that it's chronic.
yeah.
I think that's very stressful because you, just in time when you're feeling better, sometimes you're sick again. And then
Mm-hmm.
by the time you're feeling better, you get your period. And
Mm-hmm.
that goes on. And it can be very mentally challenging
Yeah.
on your health, on your mental health, because the not knowing how you're going to feel tomorrow, it makes you sometimes not plan or plan around your period a bit too much. Like I'm someone, for example, that I really struggle. Like if I have to holiday and I
Mm-hmm.
know that those days are my period, I might end up
Yeah.
actually canceling. Um
Yeah. True. Yeah. It's makes sense for sure. Like I mean, yeah. When you're like only a day and then you maybe you suspect or you
yeah,
know
exactly.
maybe it gonna
And
happen.
sometimes all of a sudden, you get your period early and you're like, oh my God, I canceled my plans and now
Yeah.
I'm getting my period early. So I have to cancel other plans and try to like, it's always these, um, and job to do
Yeah.
everything around your period. And the thing to be said as well is that I think once you know what causes you pain, it does get better, because I think there's a lot of power in getting a diagnosis for this. Like I think
Yeah.
that's why it's so important to seeking a diagnosis, because even if you don't have a lot of pain, even if say you're someone that has a more silent version of endometriosis, but the
Yeah.
endometriosis is eating your organs alive and you don't realize that it is, or that it's gonna take away the opportunity for you
Mhm.
to have a child one
But
day.
how would they know when they like you said even when they are not in pain, but how would they if they're not in pain? Then you mean this as a general checkup
Good
because
question.
it's like a it, if you say every ninth person
Yeah,
woman would have it, then it's kind of well, it's like a high possibility that people could have it
yeah,
a certain degree of endometriosis
yeah.
that people could at the end of the
Mm.
session I gonna nail that term periods endometriosis.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Cramps and Chaos. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and follow the podcast. It really helps us grow and reach more people. And of course, come and hang out with us on Discord to continue the conversation. The links is in the comments. Until next time, take care and see you soon. Bye!